June 26, 1977. Indianapolis. The corridors of Market Square Arena were wrapped in an eerie silence. Everyone was in a frenzy just moments before Elvis Presley's final concert, but the sounds coming from the backstage dressing room were the kind nobody wanted to hear. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a whisper either. It was more like a moan. Metallic, muffled, the kind that makes your skin crawl. Jerry Schilling, Elvis's longtime road companion, was the first to notice that night. When he cracked open the dressing room door, no one was inside, but the mirror was fogged. The strange thing was, there was no heat in the room. On the contrary, the air was ice cold. Is Elvis in here? He asked a technician. No, he hasn't arrived yet. Why? Jerry didn't answer. He just stared at the mirror. On the fog, there were fingerprints, but these fingerprints, they weren't normal. They were too large. Not a child's hand, not an adult's hand. Something else's. When Elvis arrived 40 minutes before showtime, he looked different. Pale, exhausted, and his eyes seemed to be somewhere far, far away. When he entered the dressing room, he locked the door behind him. He stayed inside for exactly 15 minutes. No one knew what he was doing. When the door opened, Elvis's face was drenched in sweat. His hand was trembling. "Someone's in here," he said, his voice cracking with fear. "What do you mean, Elvis?" Asked Red West, head of the security team. "I said someone's here." Elvis's voice came out shrill. His eyes were fixed on a corner of the room. "There, in the corner, didn't you see?" Everyone looked at the corner. There was nothing there. But Elvis kept staring at the same spot, as if he was truly seeing someone, and that person was smiling at him. When the concert began, everything seemed normal, but the musicians on stage were sensing something strange. Guitarist James Burton noticed during the first song that the sound of his guitar had changed, as if the strings were vibrating on their own. He wasn't playing just his notes. Another melody was playing alongside him, familiar yet deeply disturbing. Pianist Tony Brown saw the keys sink slightly before he pressed them, as if invisible fingers were playing just ahead of him, and drummer Ronnie Tett, he experienced the worst. A shadow fell across the drums, but the stage lights were in fixed positions. That shadow shouldn't have been moving, but it was. And the shadow wasn't human-shaped. It was longer, more distorted. Its head tilted at a strange angle, as if its neck was broken. When Elvis grabbed the microphone, his voice didn't come out. When he tried to speak the first word, only a rasp was heard. Then another voice. Not a man's voice. Not a woman's voice. It was a child's voice. And that voice was coming from Elvis's mouth. "Why did you leave?" The crowd watched in confusion. Elvis pulled back from the microphone. He was sweating, couldn't breathe, but the song continued, because the voice was still there. Not from the microphone, from the stage, from the floor, from the walls. "Why did you abandon me?" Carl, the technician working the backstage monitor, realized something was terribly wrong. He was looking at one of the cameras. Elvis was on stage, but there was something else with him. The camera showed a figure behind him, wearing a white dress with long hair, but its face was gone. There was no face, just darkness. Deep, infinite darkness. Carl switched to other cameras, but every camera showed the same thing. The figure was circling Elvis, sometimes on his right, sometimes on his left, sometimes directly behind him. And each time it moved a little closer. "Are you seeing this?" Carl shouted, but no one heard him, because at that moment the stage lights went out for exactly 7 seconds. Market Square Arena was plunged into complete darkness. 18,000 people waited in silence. And during those 7 seconds, only one sound was heard, a child's laughter. But this wasn't a joyful laugh. It was broken, distorted, and filled with pain, as if a child was being forced to laugh while crying. When the lights came back on, Elvis was on the ground. He had collapsed to his knees. His hands were clamped on either side of his head, as if someone was squeezing his skull. Security rushed to the stage, but Elvis pushed them away. "Don't touch me. Didn't you see? It's still here." Elvis's finger pointed toward the crowd. People in the front row looked behind them, but there was no one there. Elvis's finger trembled. There, in white, the child. Staring at me, the backstage crew froze. Because Elvis was talking about his twin brother, Jesse Garvin Presley, whom he'd lost years ago. Jesse had died at birth. A ghost Elvis never met, but felt his entire life. And now, it was as if Jesse had returned. The concert wasn't canceled. Elvis stood up, took a deep breath, and continued. But after that night, nothing was ever the same. When recordings were examined, strange sounds were detected. Between songs, there were inhuman sounds, whispers, moans, and at one point, a clearly audible sentence, "I'm coming with you." Elvis Presley died just 51 days after that concert, on August 16th, 1977, in the bathroom at Graceland alone. But was he really alone? The autopsy report showed unexplained scratches on Elvis's body. 3 scratches on his chest, perfectly parallel, as if someone had clawed him, but no one was with him that morning. Years later, during the demolition of Market Square Arena, workers found something strange. Under the stage, carved into a concrete wall, "Jesse is still here," and directly beneath the writing, a small handprint, a child's hand. The recordings of Elvis's final concert still sit in archives today, but no television network has ever fully broadcast that night because some frames, they aren't normal. There were 2 shadows on stage. One was Elvis's, the other was smaller, and that small shadow was holding Elvis's hand. Imagine if you had been there that night. What would you have felt? 18,000 people were watching a legend, but none of them knew what was happening just beneath the stage. None of them saw what Elvis was truly facing, and perhaps that was for the best, because some things shouldn't be seen, some sounds shouldn't be heard, some nights should never be remembered, but Elvis remembered, and that memory took him. Market Square Arena was demolished in 2001, but locals still say they hear strange sounds when passing by that area. Guitar sounds, drum rhythms, and sometimes a child's laughter. Is Elvis Presley's soul at peace? Maybe, but Jesse's soul is still there, still waiting, still searching. And maybe one day another artist on another stage will see him. And on that day, everyone will know some curses don't end with death. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more chilling tailies. See you next time.